the end of the day, I'm here to help entrepreneurs design brands that guide them to seven-figure success. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another Brand Doctor live stream. I am with my man, Bob Bonniol, today, and we are going to be talking about creating content that gets people to buy. You know, if we're creating content for the purpose of attracting a specific audience, bringing them down the funnel, and getting them to a purchasing decision, we got to make sure that we're super intentional with the types of content that we're creating. So I had to have Bob come on board once again. He's a fellow Facebook group member. If you guys aren't part of my Facebook group yet, head over to Facebook. You could either type in the Brand Doctors Hangout or industry experts that want to scale from 6 figures to 7 figures and beyond. I know it's long-winded, but it'll shoot right up if you type it in. And because that's what the group's all about. It's about entrepreneurs that are ready, willing, and able to scale, and they want to scale to serve at a higher level. And so Bob has tremendous amounts of experience. If you haven't got a little bit of his background, I'm going to turn it over to Bob now so he can share who some of his clients are. He's a real humble guy, so I'm going to have to probably pull it out of him. But Bob, tell us a little bit about your backstory and how you got to where you're at today.
Well, I think that the secret sauce is that I was a theater kid, right? So I studied a variety of things in college, everything from political science to communications. But then to my parents' horror, I accidentally found myself sucked into theater, which fundamentally now is such a benefit because you know, I spent my time educating myself in stories, you know, and in creating stories that compel people, that make what I call durable impressions, right? So, you know, so I started in theater, you know, and I worked my way through a lot of entertainment. I've worked in feature film, I've worked in concert design and a lot of broadcast creative, especially things like the award shows, like that you might see, like the American Academy of Country Music Awards, the Billboard Awards, you know, things like the Grammys, and also the contest shows. So stuff like American Idol and X Factor and America's Got Talent. I've been fortunate enough to have created a bunch of segments for shows like that. And the thing that I didn't expect in my career that began to happen about 15 years ago was that brands started coming to me around, you know, what in the world of production used to be called industrials, right? Which were, you know, shows for, you know, that brands would put on for their internal communications or external communications. And now we call this, to a large extent, brand activation. So, you know, so I went from theater to being a production designer for the world's most hated rock band, Nickelback, to being the creative director for General Motors for all of their global auto shows for a few years. You know, it's just as a random sampling of that kind of thing. So
that's awesome. You know, and so you definitely have the credibility, the authority to speak on this topic. And that's why I wanted you here today, because it's great to hear somebody speak from a level that you're at. And I'm going to be more of a student today than anything, and be part of this conversation as much as I can. But what sparked this live stream and to get this going is you mentioned something in the Facebook group about getting creative with your communication in order to pique interest, in order to hook people in. And so I wanted to dive deeper into how to create more creative communication. And guys, folks that are watching this live, I want this to be as interactive as possible. So if you have questions for Bob or myself, drop them in the comments. If you have comments that you want us to highlight and talk to, please be as interactive as possible, or as much as you'd like. And because I want to make this a dynamic dialogue. It's not just two handsome looking dudes talking to each other. So, so let's talk about creative communication and where people may overthink this and really start to put up these mental blocks, perhaps, that are stopping them from attracting their ideal clients.
Well, the first thing that I'll say about creative communication is you should be planning a lot. Like, you should be acting with intention, right? Creative communication isn't usually best served up ad hoc, like just, hey, like I'm just going to drop a quick thing. That's useful. That's good. I'm a big believer in continuity. I'm a big believer in making yourself visible, or making your message visible, or making your client visible. That happens through repetition. We could talk more about the power of repetition later. But what I also want to stress about creative communication is you got to get it out there. The done is better than perfect every time, right? And I think a lot of people get hung up on creative communication because they start to think about it and they're like, oh, I don't know. Is this going to be compelling? Is this going to be useful? Will people like this? It's much more important to get out there with it, and I'm also a big believer in testing, and in A/B testing. And I know you talk about this a lot. You talk about it in the context of constructing funnels and, as you're thinking about, tuning messaging, right? But being out there and doing creative communication and just getting into a tempo of constantly releasing it and then observing what's working and what's not, those are, super important things. So my first thing that I share is start getting reps, right? We get stronger when we go to the gym and do the reps, right? We can shift our mindset by intentionally thinking and putting ourselves into a framework over and over to get the reps, right? So with creative communication, if you want to get good at it, do it, right? And don't hold back. That's number one. Number two about creative communication is understand who you're communicating with. Who is it for, right? Because here's the thing. If you're going to be doing creative communication, it requires you to be plugged in at dual levels. You need to be at 50,000 feet and thinking about the long story and the conclusion you want to bring people to, which is often, in our case, what we're talking about, conversion to purchase, right? Or conversion to transaction. You also have to think about the 10-foot view, right? And so when I'm plotting creative communication for a client, I'm thinking about a long narrative. I'm thinking about a series of creative communications that, when taken together, are going to add up to a narrative, a story, a theme, and they're going to deliver you to a moment where I've shifted your consciousness by applying creativity to a point where you go, oh, I want to be like that, or I would like some of that, right? Or I identify with what has happened in this story. So you think at that big level, and then each one of those creative communications, as you think intentionally about them, you think about how do they fit into this, and each one of them is its own, if you've done it right, little narrative arc that sets up a question or a problem, takes you to a moment of pain that leads to pivot, and then delivers you a solution. So you've got the big version of that, and then each chapter of that is like a mini version of that. And it can be a lot of fun to think about it that way.
Yes. I dive deep into storytelling and trying to get the best stories out there in the best brevity possible, right? And one of the things that I've learned is, every great story has a character, it has a desired end result, and it has a conflict.
Yeah.
So if you can tell your stories in a way that just plugs away at those three things. So who's the character? What are they trying to do? And what's getting in the way? If you look at any great movie, they follow that sequence. And the ones that do it the best, are the ones that are dialed in. Like, look at the Pixar movies. John Lasseter is a huge dude in my world. I mean, I just love watching his stuff that Lasseter does versus other cartoon looking movies or animated movies it's like night and day.
Yeah.
The story is just night and day. And he's just got it so dialed in. You mentioned something before about consistency, and we were just talking about this in my clubhouse room that we just wrapped up. And we talked about how when you so there's a lot of voices on Clubhouse right now, and they're portraying themselves as one thing, but then when you try to reach out to them personally, there's a completely different vibe or tone. And this is absolutely killing their personal brands. And so the one thing about consistency that is going to work in your favor, is if you continuously show up and just be you, people are going to take note of that. And it's only going to take X amount of hits or touch points for them to say, I want to work with him or I want to work with her. And so I say, you have a better chance of connecting with your ideal client if they've been able to spend at least 7 hours with you. You're really going to get to know somebody at that point. And so pay attention to that. Are you putting in the reps or hours like Bob mentioned, And so I just wanted to get that out there. Second thing I want to talk about is being creative with it, right? So you just worked on a really cool project for Panasonic.
Yeah.
Right. And it was for the CES convention, right?
Yes.
Out in Vegas, right? So could we kind of highlight this project a little bit? And could you share with us some of the creative communication that you put into that project that made it the success that it was?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's really beautiful that you've kind of brought those 2 points up adjacent with each other, right? Because you were just alluding to the way that people show up on Clubhouse. And maybe you come with a certain expectation and then you discover something else, right? And maybe that's not what they've been broadcasting. And what I have to say is that the best stories are true. So, and the best stories, and people detect that truth. Like the people toss this word authentic around a lot. And I kind of don't like it when it's used in meetings. It's like, oh, we need to get down to an authentic message. It's like, that sounds like a calculation to me, right? The other side of it, though, is if you as a brand, and whether you're a personal brand or whether you're working in the service of a bigger brand, when you can be really honest about your brand and you can be transparent about the ways that you're killing it and hitting it, and also about the ways that you're struggling and you're not, now you set up a reaction in people, right? They're like, oh, they're not perfect. They're like me. They face the same problems I do. And by the way, as a guy who improbably enough, I'm just a kid from Cranston, Rhode Island, who just scratched my way up. I didn't go to Wharton. I didn't go to Harvard. I didn't go to, but yet I have found myself again and again in these rooms with C-suite people and Fortune 500 companies. And here's what I have to tell you. They are human beings too. They are as susceptible to stories as you are, right? They are as susceptible to making mistakes as you are. And when those people lead honestly, then they're the best leaders of all. If you look at the people that, people regard as great brand leaders, Elon Musk, Tim Cook, Bob Iger, right? I could go on and on, but those Mary Barra at GM, who I had personal, I worked with that team, right? These are people that lead honestly. And their brand stories are told honestly. When SpaceX is engaging into a new development process and they're heading down the road to a new product, a new rocket, a new thing, like they joyfully share the crashes, right? And they say, yeah, this is what happens in R&D. We crash a shit ton of times, and then eventually it goes. And this is how it is. And they stick with the truth of that. And they don't. So bringing honesty to stories is critical. So as that relates to Panasonic, the challenge we had was sort of twofold. The circumstantial challenge is people go to Consumer Electronics Show to look at things, to play with them, to see them right up front, right? And to get in the brand spaces and to feel the vibe and to see the products. So at a tactical level, we had to create an experience that could at least give you a glimmer of that, right? So what we made was very interactive. There were lots and lots of different engagements that allowed you to engage with music in a live way, to engage with products in a live way. But the thing that people don't know about Panasonic is people think about Panasonic and they very naturally, they think of television sets, right? Or they think of consumer devices. And they have that. They have that. They're a giant in the consumer space. But what people don't know about Panasonic is they're in operating rooms and they're in the dashboard of your car and they are in restaurant freezers, right? And they are in logistics and transportation systems and they are in satellites that are coordinating traffic signals, right? Panasonic is really an incredible number of business units that are serving. Panasonic is the world's biggest manufacturer of batteries. If you own a Tesla, by the way, then the batteries in that Tesla have been built by Panasonic. The Gigafactory is an equal work between Tesla and Panasonic. Yet a lot of you might not have known that, right?
And I had no idea.
Right. So what we really wanted to focus on this year was to help not just create a platform for engagement that could replace Consumer Electronics Show, but also transmit to the world that Panasonic is underneath everything. Panasonic is in things all around you. Panasonic is in the journey you're taking and the safe arrival and the great outcome and the food you're eating and the food you're buying. So we had a lot of stories to tell them. We had a 50,000 foot story, which is Panasonic is moving you forward. Forever forward was our informal branding message. Mm-hmm. And TTMU, technologies that move us, right, is their kind of overall brand message. So, we really leaned into that and we found a lot of stories to tell around that, and most of those stories, by the way, and this is a consistent thing, here's a gem, here's something to take a note down, get the pen out, right? Stories are not about a product or a service. They are about an outcome. We don't talk about the safety features of the vehicle if we're working for an automaker. We talk about the safe outcome that has resulted from those features, right? That's the message we deliver. And then the features are implicit. I got from point A to point B with my kids in the back and the rain and the traffic and the urban nightmare. And it was like I was in a spa the whole time because my vehicle was looking out for me, right? And we focus that story about the outcome delivered. People don't want to know about goods and services. They want to know about the feeling that they're going to have at the end of consuming those goods and services, that's going to be a feeling of winning, a feeling of completing, a feeling of safe delivery, a feeling of needs addressed and wants answered, right? So there you go. That's the beautiful note. Focus on the outcome, focus on the happy ending, and then the rest just stacks up to that.
Yeah. Dude, that was amazing. We got Joshua Easter here quoting you. It is so perfect. So perfect. I heard something the other day on Clubhouse, and it was people don't want the egg whites and cardio. They want the 6-pack abs.
Boom. Exactly.
Right. And it came up. Yeah. When you said that, I was like, bam, that's exactly it. And we focus too much on the techno babble. We focus too much on the feature, and that actually is going to, one, confuse people. Two, it's going to go over their heads, right? It's going to go over their heads. So it's so important for us to realize what it is that our clients want so that we could speak to that. And the great formula is take their pain plus what they want equals creative communication. And that's, I believe, what Bob is hinting to, and what he's getting at is when we start to focus on that stuff, that's when our voice gets a lot stronger and our brand message gets much stronger, because now they're like, ooh, this product or service was built for me. And if you can get them to think that, your funnel will be filled. Right?
Especially when in that message, you give people room to insert their own story, right? Mm-hmm. Which creates what I call identification. And it's utterly necessary if you're going to convert someone to transaction, or if you're going to spread a message you're spreading, or if you're just trying to transmit a signal out into the universe. You have to create identification. And what that means is you have to set up the circumstances where you give people the raw materials to see a story and to feel a feeling, and to see in the struggle of the protagonist and in the journey that the characters in the story are taking, something that they feel, either something, and that can be summed up in a series of statements like, I want to feel like that. I would like to have a vehicle like that. I would like to be a winner like that. I know, or and it's not all about positivity too. Like you just said an important thing, which is like, wrapping up the pain point in it, right? Which is, oh, I've felt that way before, or man, I have faced that challenge as well, right? So when you can create that means of identification, now people are ready to go on the ride with you because they want to see the outcome, because they've either been there before or they want to be there, and they want to see how it all turns out, because they want to see if their feelings or their desires are going to be validated. So you create that identification by making space in the story for people to inject their own mind's eye. It's why some of the greatest films and television series that you watch, some of the most important plot stuff never shows up on the screen. It's like, if you've ever seen The West Wing, which is a series that Aaron Sorkin did about a presidential administration, you never see President Bartlett deliver the State of the Union speech. You never see him, you often never, film people call this the MacGuffin, right? It's maybe the point of everything that you don't even witness. It's the thing going on that's the reason we're here, right? And it's a beautiful place to make space for people to insert their own reason, right? So when you're thinking about creative communication, and you want to, again, let's track this back. You want to create this opportunity for identification to hook me in, right? You've got to make space in that story for me to bring some of my own story to it. Like, oh man, you know what? I live in a city and the traffic is horrendous. Me getting to downtown Seattle is horrid. It'd be so much more awesome if my vehicle knew how to autonomously drive and I could focus on work. Now I've been able to, now I don't even have to show that, right? Like I could do a piece of creative communication around that shows somebody getting ready to work. They're a little bit anxious. They're a little bit against the clock. I focus on that clock, right? I'm trying to set up a time trope. Now they get in the car. We see the picture of them getting on the entrance ramp, and it's a packed freeway. The next thing we do is not sit in the car during the freeway. We jump ahead, show the clock again. It's an hour and 45 minutes later, and now at last we're coming off the exit ramp. Now we've left open to the mind's eye what happened in between, right? Was it me swearing at the people in front of me and like just, doing this as I notch my car forward? Or is it, a better story, which might be a story about, I didn't mind at all. I just sat back and read, and was productive. And this is a way that I could transmit a story about autonomous driving that makes the benefit clear by giving you space to say, oh, that could be my story. I know what that's like. So a great story is often as much about what you don't show or what you don't say as it is about what you do. In the same way that like great lighting is often about what's in the shadows as opposed to what's revealed, right? So you think about that in terms of creative storytelling too.
this is bringing something up inside of my brain here that I want to share. But before we get into that, Joshua Easton says, why Nintendo and many video games have a silent protagonist? Yeah, very much so. Yeah, very much so. So when you were speaking just now, Bob, something popped up in my head, and I was and the word FOMO came to mind.
Yeah, yes.
Right, the word FOMO came to mind. Ty Lopez was talking about something the other day, and he was talking about rarity. And he told this story about how he was at this restaurant in LA, and there was tons of beautiful women around. And he was there with a couple of his buddies. And as they were waiting to be seated, this Lamborghini pulls up, and all the dude's eyes just went and went right at that Lamborghini. And something hit him at that moment. He said all their attention that was on all the beautiful women in the restaurant was immediately switched to the Lambo because it was rare. There was less Lambos than there were beautiful women. And when he saw that, that gave him the idea to lead with all of those Facebook ads and YouTube ads that you used to see. And it was perfect for his target audience because he was going after that demographic and psychographic. And that's why he was able to pour tons of ad spend in, because it was the ROAS on that was so huge. So when he told that story, I was thinking to myself, like, why do you think Netflix is so powerful in these series on Netflix? Like, I'm a huge Mandalorian fan because at the end of every episode, they leave you freaking hanging so bad. Like, you just want to watch it for the next 6 hours, even though it's not a good idea. Right. So that's getting creative with your communication and letting them desire more. I think there's something to be said about that, because I think isn't there two worlds out there right now? There's the person that says, give them everything. Give them your best stuff. Give them everything. And then there's the other camp that's like, well, give them enough so they love you, but they don't hate you. Right. And there's different camps out there. So I'm curious, from a creative communication standpoint, what's your take on it? There's no right or wrong answer. I'm just curious, like, what's Bob think of that?
I'm going to give you the worst answer, which is like, I'm both, right? I am that guy who's like, give them your best, give it all. Just give your secrets away, give your best techniques away, give the answers to your questions away, because like nobody is going to do it like you do it, right? And nobody's going to deliver it like you do it. So I'm just going to say that, right? But at the same time, you don't give that shit away in moment one. Right? You've got to make people ready to receive a good message. You've got to make people ready to receive. You've got to create, and that's part of that 50,000 foot view I was talking about when you're thinking intentionally about creating a messaging campaign, is about, okay, this is where I want to get people to, and this is the value I want to deliver, and this is the incredible thing I'm going to bring them to. But first, this has to happen, and this has to happen, and this has to happen. And we have to acknowledge the problem that needs solving. And we need to track that back to, how do we ask the right question to reveal the problem that needs solving, and et cetera, right? And each one of those steps along the journey becomes a wonderful opportunity to, as Josh was just, setting up and commenting, to set up the cliffhanger, to get them to come back. I don't want to miss out on the next step here. We're getting closer and closer and closer to the final resolution, to the final, to the big answer, to the reveal of what's going to bring me closer to my dreams, right? So you create that FOMO, and FOMO is different. I think that the FOMO is different from virality, right? From something going viral, right? That's an accident. FOMO is created through intention. Well, yeah, you're right. You were right to, I mean, clearly we know what, like, if we knew that we could absolutely create viral nature, we'd be killing it all over the place. We can't quite, but some of us are way better and more thoughtful about doing it than others. But however, when we're talking about FOMO, there is almost an algorithm to it. There is a way that you can stop just short, just like the Mandalorian does. It's like, oh my, are you kidding me? And then you're like, I can't wait to get to the next step of this, and creating scarcity around it. I've done a lot of things for big brands and even some recording artists and some of the broadcast stuff that is all about setting up the big reveal, right? And teasing it, and you give just a little bit away. And I mean, this is an ancient art, right? It's like, in theater, we think of this as burlesque. You lift the skirt just a little bit, but you don't just rip the clothes off, right? You're just like a little bit,
take
right?
the fun out of it.
And you can create that FOMO by teasing the reveal. So when you're thinking about creative communication, the sequence of creative communication, you think a lot about, what's the teaser going to be like, right? Like, if you're a personal brand and you're working on a YouTube channel, what is your 1 minute about this channel thing like? What I advise is that it sets me up to go, oh, I need to find out more, right? That's not the place to deliver the big answer or the value right off the bat. That's the place to give somebody an amuse-bouche, right? A little taste, and to make them, oh, I want to now delve into this, right? So when you're thinking about your personal brand and how it's represented on a content channel like YouTube, that's what that video is for, right? Is to create that anticipation, to create that need to consume more, and then ideally, if you're acting with intention and you're thinking about it consciously, and it doesn't require genius, it requires a notebook and time to think about it, and just being organized and knowing what your final outcome needs to be, and then tracking back from that to get to there. What's just before that, and what's just before that, and what's just before that. And now you have your roadmap of the journey. And now you can think about how you could stop people just short of each one of those, so that you get them to come back for the next thing.
We do that when we have a guest on our podcast, right? On my podcast, we will take the video piece and I will look at it, and I've been getting better at this. So we live stream the podcast first, and about a month later it comes out, right? On iTunes and Spotify. But what this allows me to do, once I live stream it to YouTube, I can see the analytics. I could see where people's interests peak. So what I do is I don't do it, my video editor does, but I'll take that 30 seconds of that peak and I'll cut it out, and we will use that as the promo for the podcast. So there's a lot of things that go into that help us get more people to listen to it. It also is a free piece of content for the guest. So we'll make that look nice and sharp looking and well produced. And we'll give that to the guest because we want the guest to promote the show as well. Right. So I used to just randomly pick parts of the episode that I thought were valuable. But what we make sure we do, we just hard stop it. So it'll be like 30 seconds and the guy will be dropping bombs or she'll be dropping bombs. And then we just go, boom, listen, or, to listen to the full episode, you got to go here.
Yeah.
Right. And that has just spiked our listenership on the podcast. And it has, when I post it on Instagram, same thing. People are like, oh my God, how can you stop this damn thing here? Which guides them to to the full show. So I'm so happy that we highlighted that stuff. I see Josh over here. He's got some more comments here. Set up the big reveal, tease it, give it away, give a little bit away, make them think I need to find more. Yeah. This is such a powerful conversation. And, I'm hoping, I know Joshua's getting value out of it for sure. But if you just take the little snippets that Bob gave you today and apply them to your content, you are going to fill your funnel with ideal clients, and they are going to know what to do next to get them to that buying purchase, getting to that purchase behavior, because that's what we want. So it's the consistency, it's the cliffhanger, it's selling them the end desired result, showing them the outcome. These are all beautiful things that are going to help you build a very strong content presence that's going to serve you well, my friends, serve you well. So I just I'm just paying attention to time here, and I value your time as well. We'll start to wrap up a little bit because I hear the little guy in the background ready to Tasmanian devil into my office. So if you were to give some parting words to the folks that are in need of creating more creative communication, what would you tell them? Not yet, babe.
I don't want to be redundant, and it's a little bit of like I'm just going to be a little bit more. I'm going to bring some refinement to some things we've been talking about.
Okay.
Which is, it's often less about the message than it is about the response, right? You were just talking about it, right? And we were just talking about it. The response being, I need to find out more about that. Or you were talking about your teasers for the podcast where it's like, you're like, boom, 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 and then the response is what? You didn't, come on, dude. It's like, so, and when you think about that response you're looking for in your audience or your client, or your customers, think about what triggers that response for you. Right. So if you're looking to create a feeling in your audience that like, oh my God, I can't believe he stopped just as he was about to reveal the biggest secret of all, and now I'm going to need to come back for that next podcast or that next live stream or that next communication. Think about what that sets that. Well, how does that get set up for you? What conditions need to be in place for you to be like, as it relates to the thing you're talking about, right? Because it's different. Again, we'll go right back to the beginning of the show. Who is it for, right? Different audiences require different things. The setup to get people into that response you're looking for is going to be different depending on who it's for. So then think about the response and then let the message serve the response. And, don't create the message and hope it leads to a response. It's the first and foremost thing to think about is, who is it for and where do you want to get them to? And then back into the message. Don't start by crafting a message and hoping that it lands where at the response you're trying to get. Always work backward from where you want to land. And then you're going to have the roadmap to get there.
That's awesome. The best webinars I've ever seen or watched were the ones that did exactly what you just said. I see a side note here. Has everyone ever told you, Bob, that you look and sound like Sal Rubinek? I don't know who that is.
That's a new one on me. No, when I was younger, before my hair turned white, it used to be really curly, and I was told all the time I looked like Gene Wilder. I was okay with that. I love it. I love it.
Josh says it's often less about the message than it is about the response. Yeah. Joshua, we need we're going to hire Joshua to take notes on all these live streams for us and take away the snippets, man. I think he's got the best snippets of the show.
Josh is nailing each one of the buttons,
Yes.
that's what I call that. It's time to deliver the button, right? And the button is the big value. The button is the response. The button is the reveal, the takeaway. Josh is the button collector.
He's the button collector. Yes. So who's it for? Who's the response? What is the response you're looking for? What triggers that response? Let the message serve the response. Yeah. Awesome stuff, dude.
Thanks,
wow.
Josh. Yeah.
It's always a pleasure to have you on and share your wisdom and experience and expertise. I mean, this was awesome. So where can people learn more about you and what you're doing? Because you guys are working on some really cool stuff, and it's about to blow for you guys in 2021. And you know what? We're going to be practitioners of what we just spoke about. We're not going to let them know just yet what you and the Mode Studios are working on, but it's something huge. So
yeah, we've definitely got some big stuff coming up in 2021. 2020 against all odds for us. You'd think that people that tell stories in the context of live entertainment, gathering lots of people together, would be really painted into a corner this year. But we found that people want this communication regardless. They want this education regardless. They want this joy regardless. And so we just pivoted and said, okay, in 2019, where we deliver this is in a theater, is in an arena, is whatever. In 2020, we figured out that we can create that space almost anywhere, and their mind's eye will fill in the details. So, but if you want to know more about me, if you want to hook up with me and connect with me, I can be found on all the socials at Bob Bonniol. So any place you care to look, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, I'm there. It's Bob Bonniol. And if you want to know more about what we do as a company, check out modestudios.com, and you can get the big picture of the whole range of stuff we do. And every time I look at that page, I'm like, what? That's my life? It's super cool. And Henry, I'm so happy to be here. The audience may or may not know that we are in the very beginnings of also having a working relationship, in addition to the relationship of friends and sort of colleagues in the field. So Mode and Unique Designz are coming together to do some work together. We're all super excited about that. So,
oh man, I just cannot wait to create this journey together and go out and serve a lot of people and help them create the dreams that they want to create. And this is going to be an amazing year for both of us. So there you have it, guys. I just want to give a huge shout out to my man, Rob Ellings. He was in my clubhouse room not too long ago. He said there was a great vibe in the room. So a couple things for you guys. If you're not over there on Clubhouse yet, when you get over there, make sure you follow Bob and I. We're going to be hosting rooms together and doing a lot more of this stuff. If you haven't joined my Facebook group yet, it's called the Brand Doctors Hangout, but it's very specific to industry experts that want to scale from 6 figures to 7 figures and beyond. I do all types of funnel trainings, all types of funnel strategies and brand strategies in there. Bob's a member, and the community is growing exponentially. And another 100 people came in over the past week, and I'm doing a lot of awesome stuff there. We're actually streaming this live inside of the group, so the group gets value out of it. And
I'm blown away by the value over there, dude. Like, a lot of people start these Facebook groups and it's like, okay, and some of them could seem promising, but holy moly, it's like, Henry, it's like my number one check-in almost every day is like, okay, what's going on in that space? Because you've attracted such an astonishing community of people there, like experts and people just starting out, and people who have deep knowledge of topics, and the sharing that's going on. It's like,
yeah, I'm really excited, and I'm being very selective of who I bring in. I don't want spam in there. I don't want people that are going to just take. I want givers, and I want to really expand that network, because there are a lot of heavy hitters in the group, and it's just going to be. I'm so excited to see what this community does with each other, over the next year, and because it's just so exciting. It's so exciting. I've been trying to get these rooms together for a few years now. A lot of you folks that maybe follow me for some time, I've had some different themed rooms before, groups before, but not one like this. This one is very special. I feel like I'm really dialing it in, and I'm actually doing it right this time. So guys, have an amazing day. Make sure you follow Bob and just execute one thing from today's conversation. And I can promise you it's going to change the game for your content creation. It's going to help you get more people buying from you. So have an amazing day, guys, and I'll catch you on the next one real soon. Take care.